there we go. We are here. Howdy, Xavier. Good to see you right off the bat. All right, everyone. Man, move step over real quick. There we go. Everything sound good? We're golden. Oh God, what is this? What is this? This isn't ×5 speed. Me playing Elden Ring without ×5 speed? What does the world come to? There we go. Everything's functional. Oh, what the hell was that? Ooh. There we go. I finally figured it out, chat. It took me forever, but it finally clicked. I finally understand what's going on here. I feel like a total dumbass for not noticing this sooner. There we go. There we go. It's staring me right in the face. Yeah, buddy, here guys definitely need more cotton. Yeah, I don't know about the crystals still. I'm not exactly sure why we got green crystals here. That's still a little beyond me. Oh no, you had an idea. Yes! Still got our Potted Plant America statue here. Go over here. Yes. Mm-hmm. There we go. Perfect. Azure is covered in green crystals, that much is true. That is most certainly true. Which is interesting because he's on the mountain that produces red crystal. Funny how that works out. Funny how that works out. All right. So I have some options. You know what? I'm gonna go back up here. Hey, because I know I've taken shots here previously. Yeah. I know I've taken shots here previously, but I want to grab just a little bit more. So what's the reevaluation, lore man? Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there, okay? I gotta leave you guys in suspense for a bit, you know? Kind of build up to it. We'll make our way down. We'll do it. We'll do it, okay? It's all good. Upsy doodle. All right, here we go. Uh-huh. Thank you, camera. There we go. Oh, you meant to say revelation? Yeah, I was trying to parse that typo, you know? They both work. It's fine. All right, we're done. All right. Let's get over there. It's probably gonna make me add a little bit more to what I'm writing here, but ooh, there we go. All right, so here we are. We have left the rune-strewn precipice. No more cliffside ruins. We are now at what is supposed to be the quote-unquote ravine-veiled village. So this village at the bottom of the valley, and yet the village consists of one house. Actually, 1 second. Let's adjust the. Of course, there's a. We can't have nice things. There we go. That should be good enough. Liurnia, man. Liurnia. All right. So the problem I was having was this is a village. We're gonna pause you too so we get stuck on, there we go. This is a village with only one house. So, anybody in the class want to note an important detail that I haven't mentioned up till now? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? God, well, this is more related to the river and the for astrologers, so I'm looking forward to getting to that one day as well, but you know, focusing back on the village at hand. Almost look like Altus trees in this lighting. Anyway, let us now say it. It's the elevators. I noticed the lifts. So you have this one, which was basically completed, right? You can even see some remnant, the tall house. Yeah, good, Xavier. It's not really a house, but this is a lift shaft. See, there's the wheels and stuff. A little overgrown now, but you can still see it. This is where the ropes and things should be falling, should be tied, right? There we go. Let's get something like that. All right. You can see a little bit of sign of how this was supposed to all link up, right? A little bit of the wood and platforming there, right? It looks like, well, didn't work out that well, huh? Did not work out that well, did it? There we go. So they had this all built, they had it ready, so that way you wouldn't have to take these ladders. You would just go straight from the lift. But as we can see, ended up breaking down. Well, I can see your first problem right here. Why the hell do you got a rock? You got a piece of the ruin sticking through it. That wasn't very smart. That wasn't very smart. Anyway, so you got all this here. And it all collapsed and came tumbling down. See, there's the other end of the lift winch and stuff like that, where this thing would be hanging from and things. There's the button and stuff like that. Right? And then everything, of course, came crashing. It broke, and there we go. We got what we got here. Now, you may notice there's a second one they tried. And as we can see, before this one was even finished and could even be called operational, it also ended up breaking and collapsing. In fact, you might even say that it was never properly finished in the first place. And that's what it hit me when I was going through. I was like looking at my screenshots. This village was never finished. That's the reason. It was under construction still. And then they up and abandoned it. So it was never, that's why. That's why you have this weird kind of setup where you have like a building, some infrastructure, obviously all the stuff for the actual mines, but the actual housing and things for where that would help support the mine never ended up being completed, which is why we can see all this evidence of all this trees and stuff which were still around and blocking the way and things like that. All that jazz. That was all still there. Up until they started trying to clear out things for a proper village. But then, at some point, they up and gave up. Which explains why we see a bunch of blood roses following from this path all the way down until you get to the Albinorix, where all the blood roses finally hit the stop here. So the picture being painted is pretty clear. So the house was for a construction manager, LOL. Yeah, basically. So you basically have all these people. If I had to guess, they're probably supposed to be people taken from... Oh, we don't have it here, right? They're probably supposed to be people taken from the Frenzy Flame village, if I had to guess. Obviously, before the Frenzy Flame was infecting everybody, right? But that was probably the idea, is you have these cuckoos on Bellum, right? Because remember, this mine, as I showed earlier, there's a shrine to Marika there. It's not like the Rhea Lucaria tunnel. They made sure to put a potted plant there and a corpse with a rune arc right in front of it to really get across. This is supposed to be Marika, not Renala. This isn't like the Rhea Lucaria crystal tunnel, right? But as we can see, all the miners' work is going straight to these cuckoos who are patrolling. Right? They're the ones responsible. And all these cuckoos here on Bellum Highway, all these guys are not trying to protect the Academy. They're trying to protect Langdell and Altus. They're working for Morgott, right? Which is why, when we go to the Frenzy Flame Village, we can see that cuckoos are occupying the place. Yeah, go away, you. Go away, you. We see that cuckoos are occupying the place. But they haven't purified it, quote unquote, like they do all the way down south here. And they've let themselves get infected. And as we saw with the other stream, these cuckoos are so ruthless that they are willing to kill the commoner conscripts and even the nobles who are with them in order to protect themselves from the disease. So why haven't they purified this place like they would? Because they work for Morgott. And Morgott hasn't given them permission like the Academy has. Just go arbitrarily killing people all willy-nilly if it suits them. And obviously, he's not going to give permission to just decide you're going to randomly kill a bunch of innocent members of the faithful. So that would explain a lot over there. And then you got, of course, all these guys who are, again, using the Langdell trebuchets, right? Same ones we see on Altus. Try to help protect this place instead of protecting the Academy like they're allegedly the Rhea Lucaria army's job is, right? So all of these people were probably gathered up. You probably gathered up a bunch of workers and builders and such. And you have them construct this mine here. so you can mine all the materials for Morgoth. Whether Morgoth, like, you know, gifted, you know, was like, hey, go there, you can take the resources, or if, like, they were already planning to do that, and then Morgoth's like, yeah, go ahead. I got no problem with that, you know. Either way, they're taking the villagers and they're trying to build this place, right? So the miners, they're doing their mine job, right? And they're bringing what they can anyway. But then the support structure, they're the ones who are tasked with building up this stuff. So they're like, okay, we've got the makeshift stuff, but now let's try to get the formally thing. Oh no, that collapsed. Okay, let's work on this, right? And we got the one house they built, right? But between the lack of space and the overflowing water and all the wildlife, because as we see, not only do the miners have to deal with all the bats up there, you also got land octopuses that are willing to come in here and crawl up the sheer cliff face just to get up at those yummy, yummy, yummy human blood packs. It's funny that the country's army is just ruthless mercenaries. Yeah, again, that's what I like about it, is like, I like the idea that you literally basically have, like, these are like the worst, like, you know, if Altus has, like, you know, the best that America's Kingdom has to offer, Liurnia has the worst, right? Like, these are just like the losers, the yesteryears, right? Like, there's absolutely, like, you know, nothing like special or redeemable about these folks, and as a result, they basically end up being the type that, yeah, they don't have any like strong scruples or like moral qualms about all this horrible stuff that they might do, and the dishonor and all that stuff, right? Like, they're gonna just try to do the best they can and do anything to advance in life so that they're better than where they're at, right? And I really kind of, you know, appreciate that, because it really, like, not only does it make sense in the sense of the larger context, but it adds an interesting faction where it's like, they're not really loyal to anybody, right? They're not like where you're like, okay, well, you know what, the Godric people, well, it's too late. They've already, like, thrown their ring in, right? And even then, like we see with Godric, there's tons of people who defect. Even with John, there's tons of people who defect, right? But this faction, they're not defecting because they're like, okay, I didn't sign up for this or whatever. They're like, listen, I'm going to take whatever opportunity I can gather. I'm just in it for me, right? And I think I kind of just appreciate that we have that type of faction, you know? Yeah, something like this. It's actually good to have, like, another example of, like, you know, bats and stuff, because I was wondering if it was just going to be up there. But no, it's like, no, you got to deal with, like, bats and stuff who like this place, too. What are we thinking, chat? Let's do that. Let's look at that one first. And then something like that, too. There we go. I guess that's all what they could manage as a country is just a school. Can't really throw stupid teachers into a military. I mean, you can. I mean, that's what we do. We do. What are you talking about, Xavier? We do that all the time. But no, like, obviously you have, like, all these, like, you know, people of varying ages at the school or whatever, but they you know, they're not fighters by nature. They're scholars, and they don't want to fight, generally speaking. So yeah, it just makes sense. It makes like, because you have to put it in context. What is happening in the larger history? So, America breaks the Elden Ring. Stuff is kind of chaotic at home. What are we starting to see? Okay, maybe now that Morgoth's taken over, things have kind of, like, stabilized or whatever. What's this? It's Godofroy, and he's bringing up a giant army up to here. And Rey Lucaria is like, no, we're neutral. Whatever you're planning to do with those guys you're bringing on, like, you know, it has nothing to do with us. Like, feel free to pass through. And so they pass through. Then Godofroy gets his ass kicked, and a bunch of his people or whatever maybe are fleeing back there. It doesn't really matter if they did or not. In the end, Morgoth's coming down with his army, and he's like, Okay, what's going on here? They're like, no, we're just neutral. Don't worry, please feel free to pass through. We had no idea what's going on. We're not involved or in any of whatever's doing it. Like, this is obviously clearly an Erdtree matter. And so they go through, and Morgoth comes in. He does his purge, right? Tries to get rid of all the Goldenfoy sympathizers and all that stuff, right? And he installs Godric, and then he's like, okay, I'm done. And he comes back with, like, these banished knight armies and stuff. And once again, Rhea Lucari's like, okay, no, we're neutral, right? Now, all through this time, they're like, geez, things are looking mighty unstable around here. Maybe, just maybe, considering that the Shattering kind of, sort of, almost started already with the first defensive lane del, maybe we should start, like, you know, training guys or whatever, you know, try to make sure that these soldiers who are stationed here in our territory are actually going to be serving us when the going gets tough. Like, they're going to do their job and protect us and not, like, you know, maybe go to other factions or defect or leave it, right? All that. So, of course, they're going to be like, hey, we got this sorcery stuff. We can, like, teach you some of the secrets or whatever. Are you guys willing to, like, kind of be, like, our personal army? And the Cuckoos are like, yeah, sure. We'll be your cuckoo birds. No problem, right? So all of that really makes sense in terms of setting things up, right? And then, of course, you got Godric coming up here with Radahn and folks. And so you got both of their armies coming up here. Well, it's not really Godric, right? Godric's at the capital. But you got basically Radahn and Godric's army coming up here. And again, they're like, oh, God, that's a bit too much for us. So, like, yeah, we're neutral, right? And then Godric and his army come back through here. And then Radahn and stuff's army comes back through. And they're just like, wow, this is getting really, right? And then it's like, it looks like we're in full-blown civil war here, and stuff is, like, gonna get really messy or what have you, right? And then that's when the Academy decides we're gonna assert ourselves. So Melania comes down, and they're like, she looks like she's an easy target. It's just her and her small army of, like, weird, half-rotted people. So it's like, this will be fine. And so when they think, you know, we've gone through the safe spot or whatever, they pass through, the, you know, Academy's like, we're neutral, the Cuckoos strike, and they get their ass kicked, right? And Melania's like, nope. And this is her first big win, right? Her first of her 3 big wins that let her claim she's undefeated, right? So she basically whoops their ass, and then the school is like, oh, no, we're neutral, we really are neutral. And then they do the whole seal the gate thing. They're like, nobody is coming through here anymore, right? Like, we are no longer in the business. And that's when they start switching gears, because, you know, Melania goes on, she fights Godric, she fights Radahn, the Shattering concludes, and all that stuff. And then we move on. Hey Nick, hey Nicolino, good to see you. I got my 2 favorite Nicks in the chat, yeah. Anyway, back to ranting. So then you have the Cuckoos. Oh, sorry, not the Cuckoos. The Rhea Lucarians here, and they're kind of like, you know, since everything's now, like, kind of in chaos, and our plan to kind of really assert ourselves as, like, you know, an actual faction in this factional war called the Shattering has kind of gone up in smoke. How about we just rebel against Caria? They start having that idea. Because you have to keep in mind, before the Lyrian Civil War kicks off, you got the Tarnished arrive. The Tarnished are going places, like Rogier and Gideon are, like, hanging out in Caria Manor, making friends with, like, you know, Celavis and crap like that, right? Like, all that jazz is happening already. So all that's happening. Meanwhile, Ronnie, Blythe, and probably Iji are all MIA, right? So, naturally, these years are going by, and they're thinking, you know, with how like, you know, things are going right now, this would be a great opportunity. With how long this, like, civil infighting on the Erdtree side is going, this is a great time for us to throw off, you know, crazy-ass Renala and overthrow Caria. And thus they go and do that. And then we get the siege of Caria Manor. Actually, no, I think it's just the assault on Caria Manor, right? Like, the only actual siege would be Morn, right? I think it's just assault on Caria Manor. It goes poorly, as you expect. And then it just becomes this full-on civil war. They start attacking the Albinorics. We see how that went so terribly for them. And overall, everything's basically kind of been a weird, like, fucked up shit. And that's what I'm going to enjoy talking about in the thesis. Rogier's been around that long. Yeah, because again, this is a guy who's had, this is a guy who's, like, fought, you know, this is a guy who's been a Tarnished long enough where he was there for the Grace, then eventually gave up on the Grace because he was too busy being sympathetic to all those who live in death and stuff like that. He basically went his own ways. Like, he's been, yeah, Rogier is like been around for a while, same as, like, Gideon and others. And he has and again, he has personal information about like stuff going on at Karya Manor and stuff before all of this. And then he has knows enough people, so he has information about when Ronnie's retainers have returned to the manor. And you know, he starts like being like, I wonder, could Ronnie be back home? Which happened at some point during the Civil War, because you have those years where these recent years, quote unquote, when the Ronnies and her retainers are back at that castle, right? And then the years before that were the ones with Rogier, Gideon, etc. as the Tarnish and things like that. So it's only been like the Lyrian Civil War has only been going on for like 5 or so years. Again, like I'm just giving a rough estimate based on what we're given. So don't take it as too rigid. But like you have to think about it in that like it's been like about at least a couple of years that this war's been going on. And it all began. But again, it's just fascinating. You have the Shattering happen, and then another civil war gets kicked off by the Lyrnians when that war ends up inconclusive, right? Now everything's kind of like, you know, all the stuff that's going on with Godric, all the stuff going on with Radahn, all the stuff going on with Morgott and Rykard, obviously, Melania and Mikola and Moog have their things going on over in the background, though to be fair, they're kind of relevant to everything, right? As I'm saying, like, the important thing here is that these Cuckoos on Bellum, they have defected to Morgott. They're like, yeah, Academy, we can see the writing on the wall. This shit ain't sustainable. This shit ain't sustainable. So, they've now gone to the other side, and they've constructed this mine. And it's very clear now, between the space, the water overflow that's happening. In fact, I have to now wonder if all this water overflow is somehow because of the mine. I have to now wonder if, like, there wasn't actually this much water trickling in, right? And all of it ended up starting to happen, after the mine, like, I don't know, they reactivated something or whatever in the ruins. I'm really beginning to wonder that. It could also be something going on deeper in Altus that I haven't discovered yet, because we do see similar cases of overflow and stuff there. But anyway, the point is that it's very obvious that, like, all the people who are responsible for supporting the miners and workers, you know, doing all the important stuff for the military, they packed up and left. Things are too brutal here. You got bats, you got land octopuses, you got these things, you got all the water you gotta manage, you got no space. So they're like, this village never got properly finished. It's the village that never was. And as we see from all the blood roses there, down this entire way, all the way down, over to our friends, the squatting Albinorics. There we go, see? Like one bush here, right? All of that, it did not end well for them. There we go. Hey, little church lord, good to see you. So overall, oh, there we go, another bush. Overall, as we can see, it's a nice little storyline here. And like I said, it finally clicked on me when I looked at the lifts. When I finally noticed, oh, those are actually lifts, and there were 2 of them, and one of them's incomplete. It finally clicked for me, the story, like what the story is conveying, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Now all the pieces fall into place. By the way, Londor Thesis came together beautifully. I'm glad you liked it, Nick. I'm very proud of it myself. It was nice to finally talk about it. You guys, I've been sitting on that Velka stuff for years. Every time I get to finally talk about Velka, I'm like, yes, years of biting my tongue. Years of not screaming about it from the heavens. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Look, I figured out one building is a village. Yep. It finally makes sense. It's like they established the village, they just never finished the village. And then we're back here. Yeah, so this is all figured out, which means I just have to like get this all into writing. So everything I just summarized, I'll be getting that into writing. I already got like the cuckoo stuff and the stuff with the village, the village here and things like that. That's all covered. I still have to talk about like the Ronnie's returns and stuff like that. I don't think there's anything notable. Yeah, there's nothing notable to talk about here. Yeah, because like anything with Loretta, we would talk about in relation to like Mikola and the Albinoryx and a Halig tree and all that. I'd probably talk about how everyone's dead. I also talk about the Craftsman books because you have a few of them there. You have Lascar. You have one in the Highway Lookout Tower with the Albinoryx pots and stuff like that. She truly has the deepest lore. Yeah, again, I think I think like when you have the larger context of Abyssal Archive and of what I've read on Dark Souls 2, it's really impressive how From Software has handled Velka's character throughout the series and stuff like that, and kind of like weave together all the different like additions and stuff, especially the DS2 did, right? And really kind of like just make it work with what they're you know, Miyazaki's going back to Londor and kind of like, you know, completing like the Koth story arc from his perspective. Yeah, so we've covered this. I've covered this now with these islands. That's good. I did some minor changes to the converted tower. So I was thinking over what we were going over yesterday and stuff like that, and there were a few things that were I was thinking about that were kind of nagging me. So I destroyed it already before the stream, so I can, because I wanted to confirm that it had the same rune to make sure I wasn't crazy. And yes, it does. It has the same rune as all the other balloons in this area. So you have the balloon that hovers like around here. You also have all the puppets here, but the platform there still has its marionettes. I shouldn't say puppets. I have to say marionettes because, you know, confusion with these guys. Anyway, but you don't have the rest for these guys, which is a little weird in the context of obviously how this is usually set up, right? There's also a weird thing where you have the cuckoo glintstone that you have on the table here, and then you have the corpse here that has the two magic greases. Now, both of those are something you can obviously craft with the artisan cookbooks for the academy or whatever, and obviously the glintstone is supposed to be the faux sorcery. So it's like, okay, so the guy was studying the faux sorceries like what the academy has been pioneering for the cuckoos. And he's been doing some, even though he's converted to America, he's doing some research on crystals on this bottom floor. Right? Which we don't really see up here. Like, there's one small box of crystals, but it's mostly just, you know, books and stuff. Right? Same here. Mostly just books and stuff. But as we can see down here, it's mostly dedicated research tables and things to crystals. Actually, I think I want to try to get better screenshots now that I have a different idea of where I want to go with this. Let's switch over to a different character. The marionettes drop cuckoo glintstones. Oh, they do too? Cool, I have to factor that in. Mount Gelmir. I think Corey works for this, because it's just... Yeah, I'm pretty sure Corey still just has, like, burning. Yeah, okay. So my thought process is, I think the idea... There we go. All right. I think the idea was that, and I don't know how to weave this exactly into the whole, you know, ends up worshiping Marika while still seemingly to cling to Renault. Like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, a mutual veneration here. But the only thing I can think is that this convert, somehow like got curious about the crystals and stuff that and all the works that the academy was pioneering and stuff with the cuckoos and all that, and so started finding a way to engineer them himself. As a result, the academy got word of that, and they're like, oh god, we have a guy who worships Marika and Renala, and he's possibly, like, you know, infringing on our monopoly that could, you know, tear the cuckoos away from us. We got to stop that. So I think they probably send a few deployment platforms. The sorcerer guy, you know, he like probably pops a few balloons, but obviously sorry, I gotta stop saying puppets. The marionettes are still coming. And so eventually he just decides he's gonna try to hide behind the tower with the walls and things, right? Oh wow, I never actually looted this one. So I think that was probably, well, I think that was probably the idea. There we go. Yeah, this could work too. So that way we more clearly understand it's, you know, the tower that we're looking at. So originally my thought was, oh, maybe this guy is the one that has the puppets and they're patrolling for his purposes, kind of like what we see at the Heretical Rise with the balloons there. But I think the fact that it's only the one, it's basically fully equipped. I think that's the actual cause. Would have been cool to interact with more creatures akin to the primordial serpents. I always enjoy when we get first-hand accounts of formative events of the DS universe versus the biased ones. Well, I think one of the downsides to Dark Souls is that it gets less, again, you can argue to what extent, but it gets less fantastical as the series goes on, because it becomes more grounded in like the world of man and humans, and a lot of the more fantastical creatures and stuff kind of die off, right? So like, you know, some of the more creative bosses you get are like dragons and giant trees, and, you know, it's like, oh, right? It's not really the same, as it were. Like, I think some of the most creative monsters we get in the game is probably like, you know, again, bosses is like Aldrich, right? Most of the time it's just dudes, unfortunately. Dudes are like really basic stuff, right? Like, I love Sif, but he was, you know, he's probably one of the more generic concepts for a boss they could include and stuff. Like, compared to, like, the Moonlight Butterfly or something. You know, or, like, Quaylag. The giant spider demon lady. Yeah, one of the things I pointed out with Londor is, like, you know, again, this is a criticism I will legitimately levy. The problem with having like a Yuria or a Koth type character is that these are the characters who should be happy to like take questions and answer them and like clarify like all the big lore bomb secrets, but they don't. They're hamstrung by the storytelling style to be essentially like to give you like a big revelation, but it's still going to be incredibly vague and probably leave you with plenty of questions and stuff that you're expected to answer, not them. Which I think is, again, I think it's just like, it's a weakness in the writing, right? That's kind of like brought on by the commitment to the style. So you can decide whether that's a worthy trade-off or not. But I do think it is like kind of like a flaw that that makes it what's the word? That makes it like, you know, less realistic and believable than it ought to be. There we are. So yeah, I think that is going to be where I'm going to go with this. So I'm going to probably make some small changes to Liurnian Wars. I mean, it doesn't, not much. I just have to like omit the reference to the marionettes, period. Like, they were never that big of a, they weren't that important to my analysis anyway. So it was kind of just like a footnote. So it's not changing that much still. But I'm gonna have to make sure to to edit that probably when this Lyrian Civil War thing comes up, right? And so far, looking at the Bloodborne poll, Tumeru is in the far lead, which I'm not too surprised. I wanted to put it as the second option, make sure people would just instantly, they'd at least like read some of the others, so I put it as the second. Blood Saints is surprisingly getting a fair amount of share of votes. Like it's about, like it's not that far away from Loran as like a second or third place option. Like those two, I could easily see them like trading places. So like it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm glad that there's a good interest in that smaller topic as well, considering that, like, you know, I don't really talk about it that much. So it's kind of nice that I know that that's a, you know, again, maybe I'll jump straight to that depending on how the poll turns out. But so far, it looks like it's definitely going to be Tumeru, which, oh, I have, like, all the data and stuff compiled, but it's still going to be such a pain, because I'm sure I'm going to find more data I need to include, especially with those enemies. There are so many goddamn enemies, and Tumeru's the place where I'm probably going to have to talk about most of them. Yeah, again, for most characters, I think it's fine and it makes sense in the context, like what they're saying. Again, not, you know, there's plenty of narratives where you're not allowed to ask questions, right? Like, there's no problem with a story that's not having, you know, requiring the character to ask questions, as long as it's like, you know, like, it's not unreasonable for the character not to ask that, right? Like, it's something where it's like, yeah, you know, this is, like, good enough. Or it's not unreasonable to believe that the person wouldn't answer anyway, and so ask, you know, especially with a silent protagonist, asking is kind of pointless, right? I think there's definitely, usually From Software's really doing it with it. The problem is when you get to characters where it's like, no, the characters really are trying to tell you about everything. Like, these are supposed to be the big lore bombers, as it were, right? And they are being exceptionally, you know, broad with their information. It's like, yeah, okay, I get you. You're getting your point across, but man, is it quite very much an overview. It's the Spark Notes. Yeah, we got that. Mm-hmm. Is there a larger crystal formation around here? No, not really. Yeah, you don't see that too often. Like, yeah, like stuff like this makes sense because it's building up to that. But over here? Now I'm gonna want to search the lake to see if there's any more stuff like this. There we go. There we are. Phew. Anyway, so like, I'm really excited to see where we're gonna go with Bloodborne. Although I'm half dreading Tumeru, just because I know it's gonna be a long one. So I don't know if I don't know if it's gonna be one of those that's gonna take me until the end of the year to finish or not. It might very well might be. Okay. There we go. Okay. And there we go. There we are. There we are. Perfect. There we go. So you have that. Cool vampire Habsburgs. The vampire Habsburgs, huh? I mean, I guess they are. I guess they are. You know, I always think of the vampires as the Canehurst people, but technically, yeah, Tumeru are the original vampires. They're the elder vampires, you know? Yep. Mm-hmm. Anything crystally over this way? God, with the rain, it's so hard to keep track of where the hell we're going. I'm trying to see if there's random small crystal formations here like we've seen in other places. Not happening so far, though. Oh, God. Make it stop. Make it stop! Oh, but this was a good idea, making that thing toll my ear all day long. Clearly, they need to get fire. Oh, for a second, I thought that was like an ash pile. I was like, well, what? No, it's just lit rock. Yeah, so overall, we're gonna have basically between Caria and Liurnian Civil War, we're gonna have like so much of the lore for here covered. And this takes us up back over here. The last thing would be astrologists. Because we have to still talk about the early history of the Academy, right? We don't need to talk about the golden age of the Carians or their decline and the great collapse of Liurnian civilization. Gainers of the Twilight to Tumeru's Bram Stoker. You're not wrong. I will say you're not wrong. It's actually going to be interesting because some of the stuff in Canehurst I had to move around into Tumeru because Tumeru will be recommended first in the reading order. So like stuff like the vampire bad enemies I'm going to have to talk about. I have to talk about them and rearrange it for Tumeru Eel and stuff like that. Overall, it's gonna be very interesting because basically a lot of what Canehurst is doing is foreshadowing the stuff in Tumeru with obviously Queen Yarnum and stuff. So like a lot of that lore is gonna be there, and I'm very curious how that's gonna change how I talk about Canehurst. So in effect, I'm kind of working on two analyses because again, it could be that I end up editing around editing Canehurst to a significant degree in order to accommodate Tumeru. So that's gonna be fun. I've also thought about doing the same with the executioners, taking the, because I've been struggling to think of how to talk about how there are quote unquote multiple queen killers, right? Obviously not actual queen killers, but they just reuse the model for enemies and stuff like that. So yeah, okay. So it could be something like, there we go. It could be something like, you know, I taught before we go into the whole Canehurst stuff, I mention, much like I do in the Executioners, about, you know, the Canehurst knights who go into the dungeon. I'm going to talk about the old man executioners and stuff that we also see commonly in the dungeon. In fact, I might even use that to make an argument how most of the major Canehurst people are like old school hunters, because obviously the queen killer model is an old man. That would be the case for a lot of them. Now granted, it might not work as, actually no, it would, because it's still like, okay, it's been a couple decades at most. So if these guys were like 40, then they'd be 70. If they were 60, they'd be 90. So they'd still be relatively old, right? So the idea that they'd be like old hands from, you know, maybe they were young during the days of Ludwig, right? Do you know that Bela Lugosi was buried in the Dracula costume? Really? I did not know that. That's cool if it's true. That's pretty neat. I swear, there is a body somewhere around here. There must be. I refuse to believe that these guys are kind of mad for no good reason. Somebody pissed them off. There's got to be a corpse somewhere. Also, yeah, no random crystal formations over here, at least. None in the gate town either, from what I remember. This lake is so big. We could be here forever. Uh-huh. Yeah, nothing here. Man, imagine having a room bear move into your town because it's collapsed. Like, man, shit really sucked. Like, that's just the cherry on top, you know? The real rotten cherry on top. I'm not seeing any crystal. We do got some crystals here. Ah, but we're approaching the formation. Yeah, that's the thing. We're approaching the formation here. Yeah, so I think that's just a notably farther away crystal for what's happening here. I think they just decided they would place it a little farther away. Because like this is about like here in terms of equivalent like distance, like maybe a little closer. So this is about like twice as far away with the other one. I think that's probably what's going on. Mm-hmm. Right, okay. Alright. The Rune Bear Dragon connection is so funny to me. The funny thing for me is that I still don't know if that's canon or not. Like, maybe it is. I assume it would be, considering we saw it in the network test they put in the hearts and stuff. At the very least, it might make sense. But, like... There we go. Oh, no, I don't want to... I don't want to see all this. Go back to daytime. Did you mention the glintstone fireflies ambiently flying around the lake? No, I have not. That would probably go in astrologers too. If I mention glintstone fireflies at all. Is there any specific locations they're at, or are they just kind of like around? There we go. All right. All right, we gotta do it. Sometimes to make an omelet, you gotta crack a few eggs, as they say. All right. All right. Uh-huh, there we go. There we go. Oh no, we can have a little bit. All right, so it can be a little far. This is pretty far out. So yeah, it works. It's not very consistent. Yeah, it's not very consistent. But it does happen. There we go. Whew. Going to the lake, they're the glowing particles. Gonna have to keep my eye out then for glowing particles. But yeah, now we're getting close to where we were at before. What about if we head in that direction? Uh-huh. Yeah, not seeing much more. Yeah, so it's a little inconsistent on how they handle it, but eventually it does stop, right? It's generally a tell that if you can see the crystals, you're on the right track to finding a bigger formation. Which in general does make sense. Let's see. They're more obvious at night? Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? So we'll probably switch things over to nighttime. You can't loot them or anything, right? It's not like, oh, I passed by a glowing light and now I can loot a firefly, right? It's just purely based on, like, the visual and stuff. Oh, let's see. The fact that all these windows are all perfectly unbroken through all this is the funniest part to me. It's like, really? You couldn't make a broken window model? Like, you had to keep it as the pure shiny windows? I get why, because, like, they're just taking the models, they're putting it underground, and then they're adding, like, this rubble stuff around it, right? To give the illusion that, you know, it's all part of, like, it's unique. Yes, I don't think there's any examples of like random crystals. It's always going to be tied to there's a bigger crystal formation in the area. Or maybe not? Unless I missed one. I could have missed one on the map. Yeah, this is pretty far from any crystal formation here. So if this is accurate to what I'm saying, and there should be a formation somewhere around here-ish. Definitely not here. Yeah, no crystal here. Maybe it's for the one down south, but that's like really far. Oh, it could be. Oh, I didn't even think it could be over here. Yeah. Could be the one over here, maybe. That's still a bit far, though. Yeah, here. It's definitely that. Yeah. Somewhere around here-ish. Forget exact. There we go. Here we go. Like, there's a way to do this. They need those resources to model the single Scarlet Rod ancestor follower. That they did. It was very important. It's just ambient. Good to know. Okay. All right, so is there another one somewhere out here? I feel like I would have hit it. Oh, there's more. There's more of this. That one could feasibly, though, be connected to here. The problem is, like, the ones that are, like, over there or wherever. Like, that's where I'm like, I don't think so. Again, though, this lake, it's so hard, and I'm sure they're doing a lot of scene hiding, so I can't just take the map and, like, zoom out. Yeah, they're trying to indicate there's something. Uh-huh. Yeah, it feels like there should be something. Maybe it got crushed by the... Maybe all the crystal got crushed. Nah, I think if they did that, they would have showed actual, like, crystal surrounding this or something. Alright, is that, like, the grafted Scion, silver tier mimic thing? Yeah, now we're getting into the vicinity of here. Yeah, if I'm missing this formation, sorry. My apologies. I'm truly clueless. Up, no. Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez. Yep, that's there. Can't see the one over there, but it's hidden by that, so that makes... No, wait. That one should be visible, actually. So maybe it is, maybe I'm not crazy. Yeah, nothing else here. These are the islands I was talking about. We got our demi-humans here. We got our free island. Oh. There you are. We have to wait for that to be done. So this would be the sole island that doesn't have blood roses. That's Roa fruit. It'd be funny if that was actually a mistake and they were supposed to put blood roses there. No, but yeah, this. All right. I went to nighttime again. I hate that. Let me... Please don't screw up the weather. Thank God. All I ask is for clear skies. Uh-huh. All right. Ah, look, we do have more, we do have more here. Two more bushes here. Good to know. There we go. Yeah, that's about where we're... So the octopus with a brood? Octopus with a brood? No blood roses. Octopus with no brood? Blood roses. Coincidence? Maybe. But I think not. Alright. Alright, so that was the last piece of that island I hadn't done yet. Good thing I did that. Got some data to correct. Yeah, there should be something. It feels like there should be something around there. That stuff is so far out. But no, it's nothing. Absolutely nothing. All right. We're over here at our favorite Rose Church. There's nothing in this perimeter, as we know. You think Elden Ring Charge traditionally is going to impact the wall of the Night Rain DLC? It could. I mean, again, I don't know if they're worked on by separate teams, how much, if there's maybe some overlap with some staff, but not others. Like, I have no idea. I'm not the person to ask for that stuff. Thought I saw a crystal here, but now I'm crazy. Reasonable. Could be that, based on what we've seen in the past. No. They haven't delayed the DLC yet. They say it come out this year. Well, again, they could announce a delay at any point, so. Assuming that nothing changes, I would assume it's still going to be coming out this year. Like, that would just kind of be my hunch. I admit, not the strongest thing to go off of. But honestly, who knows? It's not a crystallization over here. Yeah, see, like, we got all that here. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's over here somewhere? No, because then we would totally see it. Yeah, like, there's nowhere for it to hide. It should be out here in the open. I don't know, maybe they had an idea to place it, but they thought better of it. I don't know. If I had to guess, maybe they thought, nah, let's put some of these stupid crabs, guys, and we can't have their sniper be blocked by the crystal formation, so let's make sure it's a nice open field. Yeah, nothing else we got? And we're back here. Okay, so no problems. All right, so we got that covered. Yeah, now we're by here. We're approaching there. Oh my god. This also makes sense to me, regarding the blood roses being here, because I think we see a bunch of big, large land octopuses, but none that have eaten the, none that have a brood, I don't think, so I'm gonna go double check that, but if I'm right about that, that would make sense to me about why they're trying to highlight this kind of difference, because I think there's a lot of blood roses over, yeah, over here. In the bird forest. Uh-huh. 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 Again, this is usable. Yeah, all this is like, okay, yeah, we're approaching. Yeah, a little far, but we're approaching that singularity point there, so I can buy it. No. Alright. Past our dead horsey friends. Did I talk about the blood roses in last scar? Let me double check. Blood rose. I do not, Laskiar. Yeah, I need to mention it then. Blood roses. Alright, I'll remember that now. Gotta be careful and make sure I don't unplug myself accidentally, chat. I forget if the blood roses are common here or not. I want to say no. I can't remember if this is like the only instance or if there's like others that I'm not remembering, but... Alright. Eventually the fog will end. Eventually. Come on. Oh my god. I guess. Oh, yeah. Man. Ay. So, chat, you come here often? So, I hate Liardian weather. Just let me have my son so I can take a shot of you. God, sorry, Chad. I'm so tired. I'm yawning so much. Oh, why? There we go. All right. All right. All right. All right. That should be good enough for that. I'd be surprised if I've already taken shots of a bunch of blood roses around here, but just in case I haven't. Or the shot sucked. That too. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. No, Nick, I have, I would not say I have. All right. Uh-huh. That's more Roa. Oh, did they really just put down one thing of Blood Rose? That's shocking. Let's see. Let's see. Now this one's getting ridiculously far too. Let's see. It's really easy to just break stuff, apparently. Yeah, I'm not finding more blood roses. If they exist, feel free to share, but as far as I can tell, I think I got them. I think I got the one. Maybe the idea was that they gathered them up in mass now, because we have the resentful things all over the village, so. Uh-huh. Yeah, this is it. All right. Yeah, again, I've looked. If there's more. I can understand them not wanting to put them everywhere here, considering how many are in this area in general. And they, you know, if they put them all around Lascar, like, obviously there would be, like... It would be so common, right? Like, I get that. They've already used them pretty liberally in this area. Because of all the water, but... I just see how they didn't consider it Lascar until we got to all the way over here, you know, with all the infrastructure and stuff. I just find that funny. All right. Yeah, there's our one blood rose. Again, kind of funny. Nothing else I'm seeing. Everything else looks pretty clear. Okay. Come on, come on. There's gotta be at least one more, right? They wouldn't just drop one and be like, my work here is done, would they? Would they? God, worst case scenario, I already picked it. Because blood roses don't respawn, do they? For some reason, I get it in my head that they don't respawn, so I feel like that's true. Especially with how many you can get in other areas. Whew. Yeah, maybe give it a little distance from the ruin. Uh-huh. Yeah, alright, I've checked every nook and cranny here. I've confidence saying if there's more, I probably already picked it. I'm not going through this entire search with a fresh character or something. A character less likely to have done this either. Yeah. Alright. Another one, so we're on the lake then. It was nothing too much I can add other than being like, God, some of these crystals, they're like, yeah, we'll have it start like all the way over here, lead over there. Like, it's definitely can be a bit much. I admit. So all the way over here, cover that. See, chat, this is a village. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, no, this is all the same one. So 4, 5, 6 buildings. This is what we call a proper village. Now that's what I call prime real estate. You're just moving people in, no questions asked. Just don't ask the cuckoos where the bodies are for. Oh boy. Yeah, there's nothing here from what I remember. Yeah, it's just normal poison cave from here underneath Godric's little area. Okay. Uh-huh. Rodriguez, good to see you. It's been a while, yeah. Good, glad to have you. I'll be honest, if I don't see you every day consistently, I'm liable to forget. That's just how my goldfish memory is. But if it's not your first time in the chat, you're always welcome back. All right, now. All right. The fireflies, yeah. Let's look for the fireflies now. I think it's time. I've checked everything else I think that I wanted to look at here. Got a little bit on the sidetrack because of all that. Because all that stuff involving the lake crystals. But we got at least like one small correction to make out of it, so I think it was worthwhile. Oh yeah, there you go. Oh no, we want it to be nighttime, right? Okay. Let's go look at them fireflies. There we go. Always maintain that for as excellent as the environmental storytelling is, this game is there are far too few buildings for the lands between to feel realistically lived in. Again, there's always been a problem of scale in all the From Software titles. Like Irithyll has the same issue. Like there's tons of houses there. You know, looking at it from afar, you're like, oh, this feels like it could be a realistic city. Then you actually like, you know, look at the buildings and like, oh, these buildings are like literally like one rooms, like literally smaller than the smallest Japanese apartment. Nobody would live there. Same thing with Yharnam in Bloodborne, right? So again, it's always like, you know, there's always a suspension of disbelief, and it's at some point the illusion will be broken. Oh, I see. You're right. You're right there, really. Yeah, now that I like kind of like step back and like enjoy. Yeah. All right, try to. There we go. Yeah, normally I would be like, oh, these have to be like magic particles or something, right? But yeah, I can see these just being fireflies. Especially if they only really appear at night. Though I guess you could argue it's like some moon magic bullshit. Yeah, there they go. As soon as you get in the water, then the effect disappears. Okay. As soon as we get in the water. There we go. There we go. Poor guys can't attract any mates. There we go. They're trying, they're all coming out. They're like, please, please, screw me. And the lady's like, with that stony ass dog? Hell no. Look, guys. The Erdtree and the moon are kissing. They love each other. First thing I noticed coming to Liurnia for the first time. Yeah, I don't remember. Maybe I did notice this myself. Like, I honestly wouldn't remember. It's been so long since I've actually played the game normally at nighttime.
It's me, Dielos.
All right,
Answer me,
yo.
would you?
Completely forgot about him for a second. Oh wow, look what we haven't seen one of these in a while, chat. The fallen leaves tell a story. And for once, it's not when I'm trying to get a shot. I assume there's a mod that increases the distance viewing in Elden Ring, right? Like, I'm sure there's a mod so that way more powerful systems can, like, look farther away, right? The more semi-linear entries can get away with it to a degree because you can just tell yourself that you're following a path. But when it's all laid bare, it's harder to suspend your disbelief. Again, I agree. I think that there is definitely a limit when it comes to From Software's reusing asset. I think they're slightly under that limit, where it's like, okay, we can forgive you for like maybe using the same model for saying like Ruined Village or something like that, right? But after a certain point, you're like looking at places and you're like Dominula, for example, feels so much more realistic than say, or Alaskar, than say the Frenzied Flame Village, which is I think like 6 homes, right? It's one of those things where you're like, you know, villages tend to be, they tend to be a little bigger than that, you know? I think it's also just a matter, though, of how reasonable did they want to make the world they're filling out. Like, Elden Ring is very packed world. Like, it covers everything it needs to cover while giving you enough stuff to, like, kind of keep exploring, right? Like, it's very fine-tuned in that respect. So, like, if they had made the map bigger, that would have made it so much more work of what they were trying to fill in between those spaces and stuff. I definitely think it would, you know, the game already gets complaints for, you know, asset reuse, especially with enemies. I get the feeling that would have been so much worse if they had to do that. So, again, I am totally okay with how it all turned out. Yeah, there's nothing else really to see. It's just, I guess we ran out of fireflies here. Oh no, we're about to hit dawn, that's why. There we are. I think there are blood roses here. Maybe I imagine that. Trying to keep track of all the blood rose locations is like, ooh. Yeah, there are some broods here though. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Oh. There are blood roses here, though. There are, in fact, blood roses in the temple quarter. There we go. Let's see. Blood rose. Do I mention that? Kari Manor. Yeah, blood roses. Let's put Temple Quarter. Yeah, check out the coffin cemetery here, but we put blood roses. There we go. It's just like blood roses, blood roses, blood roses. They're just blood roses everywhere, man. They're everywhere. What can we say? It's roses with blood. Roses of blood. The bloody roses. The bloody, bloody roses. The bloody blood roses. That almost sounds like a nursery rhyme. Bloody blood roses. I should have looked around Lascar at nighttime. I probably wouldn't be able to spot any more blood roses at that hour. I'm pretty sure I vaguely recall taking shots of that though, so I think we should be fine. I'm sure it's in my files. I'm totally okay too. Good to know you're okay, Xavier. Always good to be okay. Uh-huh. There we go. More of them here. Again, one blood rose in Lascar. It's crazy to me to think. Yeah, there's more. I was like, I knew we have more of them around here. Yeah, I figured, Xavier, but it was just funny how you left it as just, I'm okay too. I had to capitalize on it. Let's see. Liurnia. Temple Quarter, right? So, it's somewhere under T. There we go. Right next to Testu. All right, so, what do we got? Well, we have... This could be a little smaller. There you go. All right. Okay. All right, that's, makes sense. Oh, I include that in here? I guess that makes sense. I'm gonna have to double check that stuff. All right, so there's some crystal stuff. Yeah, there's one on there. Same one, different angle. One there. Oh, we could definitely do more. Oh no, it's fine. I mean, listen. You're watching a guy who's doing research for a bunch of lore write-ups, right? Like, we were in like niche within niche for one video game, by the way. So like, I can totally get it wanting to get like very nerdy about some of the stuff. I totally get it. Was this one of the ones we got? I think it is. No, not that. There we go. There we are. No, it's this one. This one's the one we got, right? Yeah. This one we have not. There we go. Something like this, I think, works. There we go. I'm just fine with my roll slop, lol. We all have standards. It just depends on how high or low they are. Just where do we put the bar? Is it up here or is it all the way down here? We gotta find out. Isn't it somewhere like around here? Nope, I guess I'm crazy. Ah, no, there you are. This one might be the wall one I was looking at earlier. Yeah. Yeah, we've looked at this one already. Okay. So is this that third one we never got a shot of? Yeah, I gotta double check my Lyrium folder, make sure that any I have of this forest or whatever goes over in that that file for the temple quarter, which makes sense for me. I usually tend to group stuff like that if it's like near the area and it's relevant, whatever, to story. All right, so that much is covered. Again, it's crazy to me. Maybe I've looted the blood roses, and blood roses don't respawn, so maybe that's the problem. My bar's the snake skin in the DLC. Yeah, I would agree with you. That's something where I could totally see. I can understand people getting mad about that. Again, I'm willing to. I'm a little more tolerant on that, right? Because I get it, but I totally get being mad about it too. Because I'm like, oh, you know, you could, you know, it would have been nice if you went a little bit harder on that, right? Yeah, I'm not seeing it. And again, it's fine. They already got the our friends, the Wraith Callers here. So like, as long as we got our good old bell ringers doing their job, I don't think it's the biggest deal. This is technically the ruin, and they've got the one here, but like, really, you can't do one more or something? I'm just saying. More games should have a dodge roll. Balatro, huh? Animal Crossing? Animal Crossing, I think dodge roll would be fine, because you could just make it a cute little dodge, like, type thing, right? Like, just help you. Maybe just to do something when you get around, kind of like jumping, you know? If you ever want to do, like, a Mario hop all the way over to places. I think it's fine. Ah, I knew it! I was like, there's gotta be one more. Yeah, it's behind here. Oh, and there's another one here. I can't believe I missed these. I went by them. I looked everywhere except there, apparently. See, this is why nighttime is king. All right, so we now know there's two back there. Yeah, I was like, there's no way they just put the one. It makes no sense to me. All right. No, yeah, I totally get it. I just think rationally circuit. I just think like everything, like every other indication would be like, yeah, this would the scenario that makes the most sense, you know, just Occam's razor that. And it's probably just them reusing an old, from what, I think nobody confirmed, right? It's literally just an old Gelmir asset that was never used in the base game, and they just like took and plopped it there. So like, yeah, I could totally buy it. I could totally buy it. You know, it'd be real nice, real freaking nice if the fog kind of went bye-bye. There we go. I see. I see. There we go. I think, as you yourself even said, Xavier, it's the perfect way for also Mesmer's sneakiness to get out to people, because he had an, you know, he had a bit of a, well, what would be the word? You know, a bit of an incident. You know, just kind of let himself go for a little moment there. Had a bit of a temper tantrum, right? And inadvertently, you know, made it be like, oh god, this guy we're following, he's actually like a snack. I think what I find most funny about it also is that, because I remember correctly, can we go there? Yeah, we can. Elder's Hovel. Oh wait, do I? Have I? Oh yeah, here it is. I'm crazy. Because I don't think they ever finished doing the job here, right? Like the other places. Let me see. Burned house. Burned house. Burned house. Burned house. No, maybe they did. Yeah, houses look burned over here too. So Mesmer and folks have definitely been here, or at least Mesmer's forces have definitely been here. Yeah, they've got like houses and stuff there, so like, yeah. It's burned, they become like shadow spirit things. And from what I think I recall, we don't see them ever touch any of these jails, so. Though it is kind of funny, they left all this stuff strung up. Obviously the pots, the flesh. Maybe they're empty, who knows? Well, I guess there's one way to find out. Yeah, of course, they're not gonna model innards for a pot that you can't see inside. Mesmer going through snooperty. Is this gameplay sped up? Yeah, this is ×5 speed. Yeah, I'm using a camera mod that has a bunch of useful features, including increasing the speed to ×5, control of the time of day, lighting so it's set, pausing, you know, the time of day, you know, so like I can do a bunch of things. I can speed things up, slow things down, right? And I do so as required. Yeah. Hello. Woo! Yeah. Okay, yeah, nothing else to add here. All right, just needed the refresher. Yeah, so there has to at least be some aspect of the rivers and stuff. I feel. So it's not like the water levels were like completely unwarranted. Oh. Let's go up here. I'm not going all the way around. I don't know. I'm not getting into any telephone booth, so. Oh no, wait, no, that's all right. That's the other doctor. Whoops. That's what I get for being tired. I'm not thinking proper. I need a red cape to be that doctor. I'm naked. I may as well be Hulk. Yeah, you have to wonder what the hell this is supposed to serve. It's like, ah, yes, we added the marionette, the rub my balls function. Very important. No, but again, I find it funny that they brought some of these mangroves, but clearly this would mean that before the whole lake thing was happening, there was already some of these. Yeah, it's like, wrong, doctor. It's like, wait, who am I talking about? So many cuckoo cages. Getting cool that they have this locked down. Funny how this has a wall to it. You're supposed to go through here. Even though someone could jump the fence and totally come in through this side, but don't worry, everyone follows the honor code in this in this church parish. Nobody would ever do something as wretched as jump the fence. He also planted Lyrini gas and blue flowers only on his kid's grave. Yeah, that's right. They do have the unique stuff there. Oh, come on. We don't need a hurricane right now. Like, what's the monsoon for? Come on. That one's for you, Pierce. He wants a whole bowling team, huh? Well, he's not getting one now. Yeah, unfortunately, the rain is screwing things up. If I remember right, the grass is just green while the rest of it's brown, right? Or gold, like the other stuff here. That's what I recall. There we go. Oh. There we go. Yeah, there it is. It's green. Imagine being like, I have some Lyurnia grass for you, sir. Lyurnia grass. Get you some Lyurnia grass. Lyurnia grass, straight from home. No, yeah, but it at least gives us the idea that 100% there were definitely these mangrove things, which is why I want to save talking about them for astrologers. So I can, when I talk about like the river or the lake and like general geography, like astrology is going to be a weird analysis because it's going to be me talking about a lot about like, you know, migration patterns and things like that. It's like what moving there? Why are they moving there? What's happening in the world? It's causing them to move there, you know, all that. There we go. Our favorite golden boys. All right. Yeah, because look at what we got here. Had a bunch of Lyurnia soil to bury him, lol. Yeah, it's just one of those funny things where it's like, wow. Maybe they asked Marika, they're like, hey, Marika, can you like bring in some of that? You know, had Mesmer give a house call. It's like, mother, I know you don't want to speak to me again, but could you do this for my... No, she's not my girlfriend, mother. I'm not going to be marrying the Karian swine, mother. No, she can't call you mother-in-law. So, like, at least some of these trees were probably growing around here. Like, I could see something like maybe some of the stuff around here, maybe. But I think they would have been a lot less frequent for sure, right? Like, they'd be a lot more scattered. Now, of course, obviously, they're free to just grow wherever. Like, this entire region. There we go. There we go there. Get that there. We cover that earth tree there. What towers haven't I covered? Okay, so I've covered converted. I've covered converted fringe. I've covered Testus. I've covered the one up here. I forget whatever the stupid name is. Haven't covered Oridis. That would go in astrologers for sure, because I'd be talking about it in relation to the demi-human forest ruins here and the meteor shower there. I added lens to Lyurnian Wars recently. Gotta talk about the unsung Karian. So we got that covered. We've covered the Mirage Rise. No towers here. Is there any indication that Mesmer reciprocated Rolana's feelings, or is it as one-sided as it seems? To my memory, again, I'm not going to claim to be a real expert here, but to my memory, there isn't really anything to indicate that Mesmer ever reciprocated, no. As far as I can recall, it's always been her wanting to help him kind of taking whatever she can give him, but no clarification on his own personal feelings. And considering the circumstances, it would really seem more likely than not that he's just using her. And whether you could say she's aware of that and she doesn't care or not, you know, that's a separate thing to have, right? But I really don't see, like, anything to give me the reason that's like, oh no, yeah, he was totally into her too. It's possible he respected her. I don't want to throw that possibility. But again, it's one of those things where we would really want to have a separate item or some kind of very special, unique setup. Like a secret shrine, or like, you know, something in his room, or like, you know, just something to make us go like, oh, okay, like he was thinking about her, or she's on his mind, or something, like, you know, something to give us an idea that maybe she had a chance. But like, as is, I just don't see it. Besides giving her a sword, have a special meeting room in his castle. Which one's the special meeting room, Xavier? I can only think of the research hall having like a corner dedicated to like sorcery stuff and like examining like the Karian shield and stuff like that. That's the only thing I can think of. I don't remember there being like a special meeting room that was like specifically for them. Yeah, there's nothing else here. It's just Heretical Rise and the Oridus one here. That one I would talk about in Astrologers. Heretical's a weird one. Oh, there's Albinork Rise too. Okay, that one I would talk about in Halig Tree. Yeah, that one's for Halig Tree. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I want to call that special meeting room. It looks like it's just a corner of, again, it's a specimen storehouse. They study, they research, they take specimens. It looks like that corner is dedicated to just studying, like, you know, Bakarian sorcery stuff. I don't know if that's because of the ×5 speed, but it's always weird when I see these guys are glitched down here. So I think last stream we had it, they were working properly, I think. Yeah, there's the gold here. Books with the gold. More of that crystal. Basically every room. I don't think they retextured this. Isn't this the Academy lever? Like, this looks like something you'd see at Raya Lucaria. I get the feel. The more you know. The more you know. Yeah, just library books and stuff. I really want to do his research. You have to go farming for more soon. And this has the stars thing. It's actually kind of crazy how many of these sorcerer towers are dedicated to primeval sorcery. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. I should be too surprised people want to dabble in it and go into sorcerer ball territory eventually. Considering, you know, it's pretty taboo, so good excuse for you to want to move out into your own separate tower. And there, the heresy. There be heresy. Imagine sipping so hard for a pyromaniacal, scoliosis-ridden, basement-dwelling war criminal with mommy issues that you see yourself in literal hell just for him to ghost you. Well, what can we say? The Carians, their fatal flaw is redheads. It's just redheads. Yeah, there you are. The fact it's an Erd Tree avatar and not a tree spirit, so it's like it's not something sudden or crazy or like, you know, ongoing or whatever, right? Yeah, I really do think it's just simply a matter of I think the heretic here literally just destroyed this Erd Tree, took gold of it for specimens, and will start doing research. I think that's it. So, and from, all right, so actually here's another thing I'm going to be talking about. So I was talking about it a bit on the Discord and stuff, right? Because I was trying to like sort out my thoughts. Because, you know, my initial impression when I saw the balloons and stuff was like, oh, dragon wings. Then, like, I went back, I was like, oh, no, it could also be bat wings and stuff like that, right? So I've been thinking about, I've been going over and whatever. And then I asked Zuli for, like, anything that she could provide on that stuff. And she sent me some textures and stuff. And I talked, you know, I was talking with her. And, you know, I kind of have to agree with her and stuff like that. It's very obvious it's not based on any existing enemy, really. It's kind of just like, it's kind of like just going off, like, whatever root concept there was for it. And, like, kind of, like, going from there. But like when you look at the wings and the texture laid out, it just looks like, you know, your generic fantasy dragon slop type of wing style, right? With like the bony stuff or whatever, which as far as I can tell is just not consistent with any type of bat. Like either the one in this one where the fingers are like really thin and spindly and they're covered in membrane, like you know, actual bats, or in like real life with the actual bats and stuff like that, which I don't even think they have the exaggerated fingers to the degree we see them in Elden Ring. So I'm like, you know, the color's definitely more brighter or whatever, right? The rune, like, one person brought up a good idea about, like, the runes, the possibility of maybe the runes come from the bats or whatever, because we do get that from whatever with bats, but, like, we see that consistently, you know, it seems to be based on what the bats and stuff are eating, and we have, like, Altus Citizen runes, which are rune 6s. That's just not something we see with the bats in Liurnia at all. The only ones that would have it are like the mother bats, and obviously the wings aren't based on that either. So again, we're still gonna have to divorce the appearance and basically from any specific enemy. So again, just overall, I'm like, you know what? I think it's the dragon thing, and the dragon thing is the one that has the most explanatory power for a lot of other stuff. So I showed it to Zuli. She seemed pretty. She thought the paragraph I wrote up to, you know, kind of like break this all down sound pretty fair. So I'm satisfied with it and all that stuff. So we're just going to kind of go forward with that. If that's true, though, and these are supposed to be dragon wings, this would actually make a lot of sense, because you then have a sorcerer who, again, recall, again, village gets destroyed and all that stuff. So then this, sorcerers have to move into here, basically, all the survivors from this village. And then one of them, these, again, Castle Soul and stuff, their shtick, even before Erd Tree took over, has always been like hunting the dragons and stuff. And so they're probably still doing that because, you know, dragons are going to be a menace no matter what. So like not a problem for them to continue doing it. So I can definitely see a sorcerer either participating or getting his hands on a bunch of wing specimens to do this, whatever, when he decides he's going to move out and start his own sorcerer tower and then commit this heretical research as we see here. So especially if it's after the minor Erd Tree and stuff shows up, like that could definitely work. Like, I can see it. There's also the invisible bridge that has harvest soul nascent butterflies on the balcony. Oh, yeah, there's also has the invisible bridge here, right? So like, yeah, the idea is like you sealed, you can't go that way. Instead, there's the invisible bridge, magic bridge set up here that lets you be able to find your way in to the balcony. And the nascent butterfly would tie back to Mikola. So it makes sense, yeah. That you have this like sorcerer. It would also make sense why the sorcerer is able to go off and do his own thing now, because, you know, Mikola, you know, the Erd Tree stuff is kind of collapsing. Mikola's now in charge. You know, Mikola decides to you know, lay claim, and Mikola's supposed to be, you know, kind and stuff. So like, sorcerer finally gets some freedom to kind of move around and do his own thing. So yeah, it all kind of fits together there. And again, it also explains why there's no problem being a heretic killing the Erd Tree, because Mikola's all about his Halig Tree at this point, right? So then who cares what you do to this minor Erd Tree? Like, Soul's not going to care or anything like that. Okay, yeah, in that case, yeah, then the heretical rise, I would have to talk about in a Mikola thesis. Talk about Mikola and the Halig Tree and Castle Soul and stuff. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out to me, Xavier, because like, yeah, that all ties it together. That ties it all together. Yeah, and the fact that this, again, it's not like, oh, there's like death blight or something that's killing this, right? And again, we see the reaction with the tree and stuff. Like, it has all of its crap just spreading and going all the way over here and over there and everywhere there, right? And then also spreading, I think somewhere is down here. Oh yeah, no. I think it skips here, goes straight over here. No, yeah, it goes a little bit into here. Yeah, it skips, I think, around here or something like that. But like, yeah, so it's like the Erd Tree's just like, mama, please help me. I'm being killed. Right? And then we see whatever's left of this Erd Tree or whatever. It's created, it seems to have used potentially the last of its power to create a new Guardian. Because again, it should already have the Guardian from when the events or whatever with the Erd Tree going before, right? So the Sorcerer presumably would have to have killed this Guardian, killed the Erd Tree, and now the Erd Tree's using the last of its power to create one more Guardian to try to protect whatever's left of it. So yeah, all of that would make sense. Because it'd be like, oh, why is the Guardian here? Shouldn't there already be a Guardian? That would mean the Guardian was killed, and the Erd Tree ended up having to creating a new Guardian after gathering more power and stuff like that. Well, why would it have to do that? Well, obviously someone killed the Guardian, then killed the tree. Yeah, all that flows together. Okay. All right. So that's all covered there. So Heretical Rise would talk about in Mikola stuff. Same with Albanoric Rise. Oridus Rise would be talked about in Astrologer, so that's going to be all covered. Ailing Village and stuff. That would all be covered in probably stuff on Frenzied Flame and Shabriri. At least, yeah, probably Shabriri specifically. Because if I recall correctly... No, we do have Mad Flame Disease before, right? Yeah, Mad Flame Disease has to have happened before, because of the skull and stuff we get, right? And all the things there. Unless that somehow also ties into the timeline of Shabriri, which I guess is theoretically possible. Yeah, I'd have to do a bigger deep dive on that. Okay, yeah. So the Iranian Civil Wars, pretty much, I think, you know, we're tapped out on all the data there. I have some stuff obviously for astrologers I'd want to talk about or whatever. I'm starting to organize now the Last of the Sorcerer stuff also for whatever's left over, which would be mostly Mikola. So that seems to work out. Makes sense with the crystal tears you get from it. Oh, really? Which crystal tears do you get from this guy? There's no base in here, right? So it'd only be crystal tears you'd be getting from killing the avatar. Moment there. Yeah. Nothing else here besides the demi-humans kind of just lurking about. And I don't think they're definitely not responsible for killing a random tree. Like, what do they care? They just eat worms out of the ground. All right. So that covers all that we would have there. So more Mikola stuff. It's like, goodness me, Mikola. And then the worst part about doing all this Mikola stuff is I have to talk about the Radon stuff with Mikola probably. It's that, or I have to separate it because it's going to be so big, like just the Mikola Haley tree stuff, that I have to talk about, like, move everything else. I just don't know if I can, though, because I feel like it's all so relevant. I'd have to keep it together. Like, I'll be honest, Londor was 30 pages. I could see Mikola being another 30 pages. Because I'd be talking about so much, his early life and everything like that. And honestly, it's even worse if I end up having to include Melania in his stuff, too. Like, maybe I could separate Melania into just a purely independent thing. So I don't focus as much on the stuff related to Melania and her soldiers or whatever and things like that. That, or I talk about Melania first. Though, nah, you know, that's a little awkward because then it's like, oh yeah, Melania and all this stuff. Because, like, so much of Melania's identity is tied up with her brother. That just would make, yeah, you know, I think I would include Melania last, yeah. I think I would make token mentions to Melania and stuff like that, because I think even in my Radigan's reign, I like at least, like, you know, briefly reference their curses. So like it'd be something where it's like, you know, any reader who, God forbid they somehow forget, you know, the key the key, like, powers associated with, you know, Mikola and Melania, their key traits between the rod and the youth thing. But, like, you know, people should have the context for that so they won't get confused or mixed up or whatever when I'm talking about that stuff. So yeah, a cerulean crystal tier, astrologer nearby, yeah, and crimson bubble tier heals when near death. Ah, yeah, that works. Yeah. Woo. Mesmer thesis when Loki Pro. Okay, no, Bray. The problem with doing Mesmer is that I am going to be really bored because there's a whole lot of stuff on Mesmer I don't really care about because, like, it's so basic and, like, everybody follows and understands, right? And even if I cut out, like, ancillary stuff like the Queen line and stuff like that, if I try to just focus on, like, you know, the general overview of all that stuff, I'm still going to be bored to tears. And then when it gets to the stuff that people are probably, like, you know, also going to be interested in hearing from me about, you know, any unique takes I might have, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I guess I might be able to make myself interested in that stuff, but I don't know. I just don't know if there's enough of it to really, like, you know, keep me going through that thing right now. Mikola, good lord, Mikola. I just come out with one thesis. Here's Mikola, the good lore, and here's Mikola, the bad lore. There's Mikola, and then there's DLC Mikola. We don't like DLC Mikola. DLC Mikola is kind of a little asshat. Yeah, everything else here we've already got there. Will we be more bored than Drain Lake? Ah, that's a good question. That's a good question, Nobray. Probably not. Drain Lake, I will admit, Drain Lake was very dull. Drain Lake was very, very dull. I tried my best to get enthused through the whole process. But it really was, outside of, like, talking about, like, you know, the stupid shit with, like, you know, Welliger's dialogue, like, there really wasn't a lot of, like, really unique stuff I was repeating there. I won't lie. Yeah, nothing else to factor in here. All right, so that's all covered. Minor Erdtree, Melania's rot got to it somehow. Isn't there, like, one of the rotted duelist guys somewhere in this, like, foggy area too? Shattering. What would I be talking about with Shattering? It would be the Ruler Alliance, right? So I would talk about more. Okay, it would be about Morgoth's rise to power. how the clergy installed Morgoth after America ousted herself, essentially, right? So we would be talking about that. Then we would give at least a brief overview of the first defense of Langdell. Probably also talk about like some of Morgoth's countermeasures in the Night of the Black Knives. Because I think it was Morgoth, right? Was it him who did the torches, or is it left vague? I guess they could have done it before he was in power. So yeah, that could be that. But like, yeah, we talk about the Ruler Alliance. Then we talk about the first defense of Langdell. Then we would be like, okay, you know, Morgoth, you know, that got handled. I'd probably talk about like briefly like Kristoff and stuff like that. Maybe give it a little more attention to Kristoff. I don't remember how much I talked about it in Godric, but probably not enough. So probably give a little bit more credit for Kristoff helping finish it or whatever. Then Morgoth essentially moving on with reconstituting the alliance now after it's been undermined. Trying to keep things together. Then eventually we get to the second defense of Langdell. We'll talk more about like Morgoth's side and him creating his market identity, and being able to stack up the bodies in that battle in order to be able to throw off the attackers, and then everything kind of plunging into proper civil war. Morgoth did the torches. Okay, so Morgoth is the one. Yeah, I thought so. I was like, is he explicitly? Again, it's one of those things where I can't remember anymore if that's like an assumption that like gets into my brain as being like, oh no, that's confirmed, or if that's like, you know, actual lore. But anyway, so we would talk about him winning the second defense of Langdell and everything like that. And then we'd probably again give the overview of like, you know, the conflict then really begins. It ends with Melania and Radon's battle, so that's always going to be like a guidepost of being like, yeah, this has happened. This is considered the last battle of the Shattering. We then talk about how it's not really over. We still see conflict and battles and stuff still ongoing. Again, that wouldn't really be that much. Honestly, this analysis is sounding really short. Like, it'd be mostly just the Morgoth, you know, going to power stuff, and a little bit of Moog. Like, we have to talk about, like, Moog is also getting out of the sewers with him. I'd have to think now about, like, where would I end it then? Because, like, do I want to include the Tarnished then? Like, because they're not, you know, the Tarnished aren't really the Shattering, but it's like, what would I call, like, what would I call the arrival of the Tarnished as, like, a separate analysis? Like, I don't know, Tarnished Awaken? Like, I don't know. Like, that, yeah, that's a weird one. The Tarnished Round Table, maybe? That could be it. Yeah, that's a weird one. Because the problem would be, like, if I go into the Tarnished, I'd eventually have to go into the Tarnished and why Morgoth ends up kicking out the Tarnished. And I have to talk about, like, why the tree has all the ash and stuff like that. Oh, that's something I can include. I could talk about a bit about Morgoth and his security and stuff that he's done to keep Langdell secure after the Shattering kicks off. Obviously, we'd want to talk about the second defense of Langdell from the perspective of Morgoth and the perfumers and stuff and the links they go to. And how the war is. Maybe some general stuff, again, from Langdell and Morgoth's side. Yeah, I could flesh things out with there, and then I could always wrap things back around, but say, you know, eventually, but you know, the conflict itself would eventually end with Melania and Radon's battle in the Caelid Wilds, as it were. We are returned. Just drop the Godfrey line. We are returned. Is Dark Souls 3's lack of a proper physical patch to the first flame and the whole confluent ritual to reach the fire kind of a plot hole? Since there's the question of how did new lords get back to be buried? Yeah, that is kind of that is, again, I've said this is my criticism levied at Dark Souls 3, is that the closer you get to kind of like the premise of the game, you know, the more problematic the writing is, and considering, you know, it's the premise of the game and it's so important, like, it is kind of a major problem with the Foundation is, like, where the hell, like, you can maybe hand wave the Cemetery of Ash and not being able to see where the bodies are buried, like maybe parts have collapsed because the high wall or something or whatever, or where all these other Lords of Cinder that are supposed to be buried, like, where are they all and all that stuff right there, right? Like, maybe you can hand wave some of that stuff, but the fact that we have no obvious area of how would the physical path work, how, like, what, like, ask yourself this: what was the original plan? If the Lords of Cinder didn't decide that they were going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we're just going to be leaving then, yeah, no. We got, like, more important stuff we'd rather be doing instead of waiting on, like, an Enkindled to maybe be able to replace as the Lord of Cinder. Like, what was the plan exactly? How exactly were you supposed to train up an Unkindled to become a proper fire linker? How is this supposed to work? Were all the Enkindled supposed to fight each other and, like, you know, like, last one standing will be the would-be king? Were they supposed to, like, fight the Lords of Cinder after certain, like, were they supposed to instruct them and eventually fight them until they could defeat them, and then they would, like, again, it's never explained how exactly this system was supposed to actually work if things actually went according to plan. As is, it's sort of like kind of all set up because, you know, the game needs it to be this way in order for things to work out. So again, that's another big problem with the Foundation. And like you said, no, Braid, because there's no, like, physical path or anything, we have no idea how exactly any of this would have actually worked out, even if all the problems with the Lord of Cinder be doing so. Like, hello? Like, how are you supposed to get there normally? Like, what? Why is the emergency system based on basically assuming that, well, you know, everything's already going to be fucked if we're doing this anyway, so I guess we'll just teleport you over to the kiln in the already fucked world. It's like, what? It's very much kind of like, really? You couldn't think of any better strategy? Any better, like, way to set this up? Like, there's literally no physical path we could be taking to do it, like, in the present now? It's kind of just a foregone conclusion that, again, Dark Souls operates on the, you know, kind of like, you know, to an extent, the past is already, you know, kind of decided, you know, it's kind of, you know, fated, destined, predestined. So you can't really change the past, essentially, right? Like, it's already, like, your involvement in the past is already factored in. So by that same token, in theory, the future is also kind of predetermined, because all the actions that you could do to go into the past or whatever won't have already been, like, factored in. So therefore, anything that could potentially be done in the future already, right? But, you know, that begs so many questions about, like, what people are doing and motivation things. You know, it's all running on hope, as Andre says. You gotta at least have hope. But yeah, again, like I said, there's a lot of problems with, like, Dark Souls 3's, like, premise, right? Where, like, everything around Dark Souls 3, the wider lore, the world, all that stuff, it's like, okay, that's all good and stuff. But when you get to the actual premise of the game and this emergency system and how it's set up for the TARS, it's like, there are problems. There are a lot of problems. And part of it is, in fact, because they clearly had some point early in development a very general idea for what seems like it was probably going to be a Lord of Cinder graveyard, and it was probably going to give us some path that would lead to the first flame, which would explain why Oseros is there, kind of like what we see in the final game, with him at the old Firelinking Temple that would eventually lead to Firelink Shrine, and therefore allow him to participate in the, you know, the same, you know, system as, you know, we are with his Ocelot. Like, so all of that, like, you know, that all seems pretty consistent and everything. The problem is ultimately it just doesn't work out without that area being there and giving us that physical stuff. Because then at least you could be like, oh, we go there, we fight and kill Oseros, and we see, like, you know, kind of like with the Centipede Demon, there's this big door, and it's all, I don't know, there's rubble or, like, terrible stuff, or, like, you know, it's totally covered. Maybe there's a doorway, but everything is totally covered. You're like, okay, yeah, there's rubble and stuff. Maybe there was, like, a wormhole or something here, but, like, it's now destroyed or broken, or there's no way in the current circumstances we could possibly remove all that rubble in time or whatever, right? Like, there are tons of ways they could have been able to very easily convey why we have to do things the way we're doing them, but we don't get that. It's a shame, but it is what it is. You're not seeing too much else that we could really throw in there with the Morgoth stuff. I probably want to mention, like, him with the bodies and things like that.
Smoldering with that wretched flame of ambition.
Yeah. We know, Morgott. I hope this actor gets more work because, you know, that role, his performance was so great. Truly an iconic character. Oh, I don't know where he is. I really think that Elden Ring's Erd Tree Thorns in the middle act of the game is at least a retread of Dark Souls 3 having a physical kill path blocked and have us take another path to reach our goal. Yeah, maybe there was some inspiration Miyazaki had there. It's possible. Maybe there was some, like, you know, maybe that was just something. It is kind of generic, though. It's like, oh, we have a path, but it's blocked. Like, From Software's done that before. They did that with the sealed gates in 1. 2 also has, like, rubble technically blocking your path, so you have to go through the shrine. Oh, I can't even say it with a straight face. It's so stupid. God, man, that horrible rubble blockage. God forbid you, like, move a single stone or, you know, lift a leg higher, like, lift your knee above your freaking stomach for like 5 seconds. If I remember correctly, he's Geppetto and Liza P. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Liza P had DLC recently, right? So now it's only about getting a sequel. Do I have that right? Like that's the plan for it now? Yes, the only thing I'd want to talk about now after it would be, like I said, Shattering, maybe Night of the Black Knives. That might be a good thing to get into it. Yeah, I think someone in Discord today just like was asking me about the plot, my thoughts on something about it. Was it yesterday? I don't remember anymore. And then Nox. Nox would be also something I'd be really interested in covering because I have so much Nox stuff that's now on the back burner. Like, you know, I had it as part of like Erdtree's beginning, but then I had to cut it. So now it's kind of like just there waiting for me to put it into another analysis. Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. Congrats to it. I'm glad that that game was able to apparently rise above being just a Souls-like, a feeling like legitimately just, you know, solid game on its own. Yeah, okay. There's nothing else Morgott related we gotta talk about here. That was no brain stream. Ah. Yeah, now I remember. That was yesterday. Yeah, because most other stuff, there's not really too much to talk about. Maybe this. Probably this I can maybe include for a Shattering. Be like, oh, hey, look, like the soldiers are doing this thing here. Obviously, all the Godric relevant stuff we're going to be cutting out, right? So I guess we would just talk about how that, you know, they're doing their job, patrolling the streets. Which, yeah, that's basically what all they do. Like, there's really not too much there. It's like, yeah, they're doing their job. Yeah. Yeah, hey, this would be like related to Godwin and stuff. I would have to be talking about is Godwin and, like, you know, those who live in death and all that. God, I don't even know where I would put that. Would that be before the Shattering or after? Liurnian Civil War is definitely going before Godric. It'd probably be the first topic I talk about after the Shattering. Maybe Rykard would supersede it, because I would talk about like stuff involving Morgott with Rykard too. So it would be like, you know, Shattering, we talk mostly about Morgott. Then we talk about a little bit of maybe about Rykard. Then we talk about Liurnia. Yeah, because then it's like moving away, right? It's like, okay, we have Morgott, Rykard, Liurnia, Godric, Radahn, and then we circle back to Malenia and Mikola. Right? The Giants might be also an interesting thing to talk about. Just because, at least the Fire Giants. because I could talk at least about stuff like the summit and things. It'd probably be a smaller analysis, because I've talked about like some of their stuff before. I think the problem would be is like with the fire giant, would I have to like delete a fire giant analysis because I have to put it into something about the larger giants? That I don't know. I have to think on that one more. Because yeah, we'd have giant lore I'd want to talk about here. Obviously, Far Missoula is another thing. People ask me a bit about our Far Missoula too, so maybe I should also consider, you know, putting that on the priority list at some point. At least, like, you know, the basics of what I have now, and I can always add on extra. You know, that's the thing I have to accept, is that for a lot of Elden Ring, I'm not in a position where I can, like, you know, go in depth onto everything I would like to and answer every question. I should just, like, you know, give my thoughts on what I can piece together to the best of my ability. Maybe put some stuff that, you know, maybe I'm not 100% confident in, but reasonably confident, and then we can move from there. And then, like, you know, I can always update or change or revise whatever's needed. Maybe I need to get into that mindset. 'Cause I'm just slowly building my knowledge base, and eventually I'll get to a point where I'm like, oh, no, actually that's wrong. I got a better idea now or whatever, right? Because, like, it's Nox, it's Far Missoula, it's the Fire Giants, it's the Fire Monks. That's another one I've been wanting to do. It's, of course, the Shattering with Morgoth. It's the Night of the Black Knives, right? It's, you know, Rykard is one I'm willing to leave on the back burner and stuff like that, because, again, I don't, you know, it's mostly going to be me rehashing what everyone knows. Like, it's not, Rykard's not that difficult a character to follow, like, the history and, like, what went wrong and stuff like that. I don't know if I have that much to add. Maybe a few details I can talk about, but, like, you know, it's not like substantially different. Same with, like, you know, the what are they called it? The Gloamite Queen stuff. The god skin hunts and all that jazz. Oh god, when do I think Malay Murray would have to be his own separate kid. No, I would probably talk about him in Melania. Yeah. Because we'd have to talk about Melania, the cult stuff that gets started because of her, all the place that her people go to. Yeah. Yeah, so that would be its own separate thing. Like I said, Godwin would be its own thing. I would talk about stuff like the Woodfolk ruins. Thankfully, most those who live in Death Thing are very broad and generic. Like maybe I could talk about like Summon Water Village and maybe other specific examples. Wyndham we don't talk about because we're already talking about it in Godric, as I recall. Yeah, there's not too many places where like those who live in death are that important. Maybe Castle Sol. But Castle Sol would probably be under Mikola, because we talk about like Sol and what's going on there, and you know, all the jazz, all that jazz. Not really anything here. Obviously there's the death tree and stuff, so I would talk about that. Maybe a little bit about the cult things that's getting started, but I have to double check because I think I might talk about that already with Godric. Nox is gonna be a weird one though because of the history. Like, when do I talk about Estelle? Oh, Shattering, I'd also talk about this. At some point this would happen, right? Yeah, especially if I talk about the Tarnish thing, because I believe that this would probably be tied into the Tarnish, so that would definitely be something to consider. Hey Loki, did you ever get a chance to translate the description for the Sirius tree, the weapon? Oh yeah, the tree spear, right. Thanks for reminding me, Night Scout. I did have that. I had a translation for that for you. Forgot to grab it, so... you know what? I'll do it after stream, Night Scout. I'll send it to you. Make your life easier. Make my life easier. But yeah, no, Tree Spear, I forgot what your exact quote was, but it wasn't like that. It was talking about, like, you know, it was talking about its form as the, it was talking about the Erd Tree's form as the Crucible. I think he said something like, you know, the Erd Tree which became, or the Crucible that became the Erd Tree or something like that. No. Anyway, yeah, there's Mirage Tower there. You can mention the tons of death row on the mountaintops that are partially disguised by snow. Oh, well, again, most of that is Castle Sol related. It's not really relevant to anything, so I wouldn't include that there because it'd be much more apt to talk about it in regards to the stuff that's going on with like Mikola and the eclipse and all the efforts Mikola has to try to combat those who live in death, right? A Godwin thing I would probably be talking about, obviously Godwin's burial, his death, the being dead in soul but alive in body, essentially, right? What's going on there, Fortisax, then like those who live in death who arise. I probably talk about like stuff like this tree thing. Again, I don't know if I talk about the cult thing. I have to double check my Godric stuff, see how much I talk about it there, or if I'd want to move it or whatever. There really isn't that much. Maybe sought cause. No, I don't think it has anything to do with. Again, I think I've said this before. What looks like happened is that, Mikola's like asking them to try this eclipse thing or whatever. They're doing the eclipse thing. Those who live in death are responding because again, the death route's already, it moves. Death route's going to be wherever the plot requires it. So you have this army of those who live in death who then are attacking and end up killing and defeating, a lot of the Castle Soul people before they're finally repelled and everything like that, right? So that's kind of the idea, is like they're trying to stop it because, I don't know if it's like they're controlled by hive mind or if it's because of Mr. Mariner or whatever, right? But they're essentially, they're leading the charge in order to kind of stop, Mikola's attempts to try to, end their existence, right? So it's technically self-defense on their part. Anyway, so like, yeah, there's not too much I'd want to because there's not too many incidents of it like early on. I probably want to get into like stuff like the crabs because the crabs with the maggots and things are like an interesting example to kind of go through. Probably talk about those who live in death in general as a concept and how it seems to work. Like I said, I would probably talk about Shabriri or something if I'm going to talk about like at least the modern version of Frenzied Flame, assuming that there was in fact, separate flame flare-ups, as it were. Yeah, this stuff would all go into... This all stuff would go into Mikola. Yeah, like I said, that would all be astrologers. This would, of course, probably be Ronnie, because it has to do with, like, Blythe or whatever, right? The guy that's locked up there. Word, Godric. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we covered all the Godric relevant stuff here. Obviously, stuff with Shelfer and stuff would be, like, Ancient Dynasty or Nox. Swim Water. Artishak. Ours would be a completely separate thing, because he's such an irrelevant character. Like, he's more of a plot device. Yeah, nothing. Well, obviously, War Master might be Rykard. Yeah, if I include... Yeah, because I have to include the... it would have to be, like, Shattering, and if the Tarnish stuff is a separate thing, it would be a separate thing with them, and then we'd get into Rykard infactions and stuff like that. Let's do in there. The Saints Bridge, High Road Cave, Death Touch Catacombs. Oh! Would I talk about... Yeah, I might talk about... No, Shattering would be where I would talk about the duelists becoming, the pumpkin heads. That would be a good place to mention, because it's like a general thing as a blank. It'd be a good blank instead of being like, oh yeah, you this fighting, yeah, it'd be a good thing to talk about, like, what every faction's doing, not just Morgoth or whatever. Swim Water, like I said, probably would be a Godwin thing if I had to gather. Yeah, Melania stuff with a lot of stuff with the Kindred of Rod and things like that. That would be covered there. Yeah, anything involving that and the cultists. Everything else we've pretty much covered there. Mikola would be like Church of the Plague and stuff like that. Obviously, same stuff with like the Forsaken Ruins. Some stuff in the Limgrave would go there as well. Hideaway we've already got covered. Fort Faroth we've got covered. The Dragon Barrow, Warden Catacomb. Yeah, that has some of the magic graces I recall. And then this would be Farum Azula stuff at this point. Yeah, it looks like there's not a lot left hanging other than like really broad topics like the jellyfishes and crap. Let's one there. Yeah, there was some form of, there was some sort of rebirth. If I recall correctly, it's the same term used for Bernala's and her, you know, her rebirth arts and stuff like that, right? So there's some kind of, there's some form of resurrection happening there. With, you know, the Wandering Mausoleum. Something succeeded there. Now, again, whether that means, like, you know, demigods was able to walk around again, or if it's just something like, oh, demigod finally got to die proper because, you know, souls and stuff like that, and got to return to the Erd Tree's roots or whatever, and Lutel, like, joined him or something, like. That I would have to think on. Yep, cover there, cover there, cover there, cover all that stuff in Lyurnia and stuff like that. I don't think there's anything left once I cover the stuff with the dragons and things here on Lyurnian Civil War. Erd Tree, Revenge. Oh yeah, Revenge Shack would be, that'd be like, that's for minor character stuff. I don't have to worry too much. As I said, there is one question I have, which has to do with what's his face. You know, the sorcerer guy up here. I forget what his name is. I want to say Gustav, but I know that's not it. Garrus, that's the one. Garrus, yeah. Temple Quarter. All that, Crystalline. Like I said, most of this would be astrologers and stuff if I have anything left over. Oh, Black Knife Catacombs. No, Black Knife Catacombs would be mostly talk. That'd be interesting because I would want to talk about the Night of the Black Knives and stuff like that. And what happened with our. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Do I talk about all the stuff and just kind of, because I do talk about those who live in death and stuff, you know, presupposing like just a basic overview of like, yeah, there's like reanimated skeletons and stuff that happen there, and there's like some indications when that stuff happens, specifically with like the skeleton types. So would I be in a position where I talk about, where I would talk about essentially like the Black Knives and what happens to the assassins, but I avoid any talk about those who are going places that are obviously interested in collecting power from like Deathroot and stuff like that? Like, do I avoid talking about that in order to save it for Godwyn, or do I kind of just mention it as an overview? I have to go check what I've already said about those who live in death. Maybe I do mention them touching Deathroot and stuff, because if so, then I probably would include it, and then I would go into the details probably about like, yes, they do this thing with Deathroot, why does that, you know. Lutel's demigods seem to have already been dead in body and soul, so the resurrection would seemingly to be. Again, what are we talking about when we're saying dead here? Because there's again, for example, Godwyn was stabbed, he was killed, right? But he's considered to be he's considered to be he's considered to be one of those who live in death, even though he is you know, soulless, dead in soul, right? Like, you know, similar to how Ronnie is dead in body or whatever. Like, she's completely bodiless or whatever, but she still has her soul. So, like, again, there's a lot of nuance to even just saying death and stuff like that. So I want to be careful about, like, what we're trying to clarify there. Because as far as I'm aware, we don't really have anything on Lutel's demigod or what happened. We'd have to just kind of assume either A, like, you know, is the demigod, like, you know, back up and, you know, it's like a, Jesus Christ is back! The God lives! Or is it something, you know, much more simpler, being like, oh no, you know, the soul was able to be reconstituted, it's back in the body and stuff like that. Now both the soul and the body are being properly laid to rest or whatever. And it's, you know, those are my questions. Uh-huh. Yeah, there's more of these stupid spirit jellyfish. Spirit is also possibly a... Yeah, you're right. There could be a difference between a spirit and a soul, too. Yeah, right. Like, again, there's a lot there that, again, it goes back to my admitted ignorance that about, like, the cosmology of Elden Ring and stuff like that. Like, that's why we're focusing so much on the history stuff, because the history stuff is the stuff that's much more solid, and then we can, like, kind of derive the principles and stuff once we have all that sorted out, where it's like, okay, yeah, this happens or whatever, right? Or, you know, oh, no, wait, this has to happen this way now, because now we know this is a rule, clearly, so therefore this has to play out, and, like, you know, all that jazz. Yeah, so I definitely talk about the village there and stuff like that. I don't remember if there's anything Dominula related. I'd still want to. Oh, I want to talk about the Godskins probably. But that no, I would save that for. I would probably talk about all the Godskin stuff with. I'll probably talk about that in the aftermath for like a Glowmite Queen thing. Because like the Godskins are like very minor. Like the only one that would be kind of awkward to talk about would be probably this one. Because like a noble who's going after Ronnie, who we meet at the Divine Limgrave's Church, likely because up ahead is Ronnie's corpse, which bears the curse mark of death or something like that, right? Like I'd probably mention something like that. I'd probably have to also reference like stuff like the Death Root and things like at Far Missoula or whatever, and then like you have our Godskin guys there, and of course Malakath is also there and stuff like that. So like I'd have to talk about like kind of things like that related to it. But again, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I think that's fine to kind of like just kind of say as a matter of factly, because we would be having to clarify like the details of how and why anyway. Omen incident, like I said, I would also like to kind of cover because it'd be relatively short too. Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, okay, I think we have most of our Elden Ring stuff, like at least for the modern stuff. Like if we go back, like I said, Fire Giants would definitely be something where I feel like, that one could be dicey. There could be a lot of stuff I'm missing there that I would want to include later on, or have to do a new post for to do so, right? Do I really want to like, you know, jump the gun on that? But at least for like the modern history stuff, like now that I'm like, I've done so much of Godfrey's history. I've done now covered, you know, Radigan's reign and stuff like that. Like, and now we're like getting like a good amount, like with Lyrian Civil War, we'll have a good amount of like all the history of like the, you know, a good amount of like the Shattering and a bit of the post-Shattering covered too. I think it'll be a good time for us to probably, what's the word? You know, it would probably be a good time for us to kind of like, you know, focus on like, you know, filling out some of those other factions. It'll be easier because I'll have a lot of the groundwork for other things done too. You know, fill in the holes, as it were. So that'd be kind of neat. Yeah, Shaded Castle would probably have to be its own thing because like there's Elemer, there's Malay Marais, right? Like at the very least, I'd probably have to have it where I'd have to talk about, if I do talk about like in Malenia, Malay Marais, and like him being like such a fanboy or whatever for her and all that jazz. Yeah, it would have to be its own dedicated section, right? Like, yeah. It's even gonna be funnier because if like I said earlier, it's gonna be something where like I talk about Mikola and then Malenia last. It's gonna be funny to me how Malenia ends up being the final demigod I talk about, besides maybe Moog. Moog would probably be. Ooh, yeah, actually, now I have to question, like, do I talk about Moog before I talk about Mikola and Malenia? I guess the question would be how much of Moog's stuff would I be talking about in Mikola's, to the point that I may as well just talk about Moog first. Because so much of the history would otherwise be getting cut out anyway. Yeah, it could be something like that. Most curious indeed. All right. I think that might be exhausting, like what I would want, what I can brainstorm right here. I think we're kind of at that point. Like I said, Rykard stuff is pretty straightforward. It's not like Rykard is thankfully mostly self-contained. There's only a little bit of like Glowmite Queen incident we talk about with like parts of like the manor and stuff like that. Stuff like the hero's grave here, like some of the coffin cemeteries and stuff around here. Like honestly, for me, the bigger stuff would be talking about. The bigger thing for me here would be talking about like Deathbirds or something with Gelmir, which would be like its own separate thing for Deathbirds, and like that's probably one of the broader topics that I'd like to get to, but I probably want to wait on because I might be jumping the gun if I go at it too early. Same with Hornsent. I could probably get away with like maybe talking about a lot of stuff with Hornsent Definitely could not do Ancient Civ / Rao. Ancient Dynasty might be also a little awkward for me with my current knowledge base. Yeah, okay. Whew. Yeah, in that case, it's going to be good that I have all this stuff organized, but the focus is going to be probably working on Bloodborne, because that's what people want. And you know what? I'm making good progress on this current thesis I'm coming out with. And so once that's posted, the poll will be done, and I can jump right into Tumeru. And once I get through, again, assuming Tumeru wins, it could always change. I shouldn't get ahead of myself. It could end up being Bloodsaints or Loran. That still has a chance. But yeah, if Tumeru ends up winning and stuff, I can like jump into that. It'll be a big topic, but we'll see if I can finish it before the end of the month. Probably not. And then, yeah, in the meantime, it'd be I probably want to also like organize like my data and stuff for other things like Fire Monks, like, you know, Bloodsaints, like, you know, make sure like all that's in like a doc or whatever already done, so like I can just kind of like jump straight into the analysis part as well, since that'd be like the easy end for sure. And then the Mesmer stuff. Yeah, I think the only part of Mesmer that I would talk about that I find would be like genuinely interesting to talk about would probably be the stuff on Rolana. Because otherwise, I think I would basically be like parroting like most other people's talk and takes on some of this stuff. Maybe some of the Fire Knights I might have something unique to have, but I'll be honest, I have not given enough thought on the Fire Knights to have really crystallized an opinion. Yeah. Okay. In that case, chat, I think we're gonna call it here then. Again, it's been nice to, you know, it's nice to go over like, you know, some of the stuff I've been working on, you know, here you guys, you know, throw at me, point out some things I'm gonna miss, you know, all that jazz. Always appreciate you for that. But yeah, I think here we're gonna stop right now, and I'm gonna probably hit the hay because, oh boy, finishing this Civil War thing is gonna be, it's gonna be a mission, because I want to get the first draft done tomorrow if I can. If I can get that done tomorrow, I think I'll be golden, and then I can like probably have another draft done like the next day or whatever. Because I think it's mostly gonna be fine. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I feel like the way things are stringing together, it'll probably be harder to figure out where to put the dividing line on some paragraphs, but I think I'll be able to do it well enough. But until then, that's for me. That's for future Loki to worry about. Thanks so much again. Bye-bye.